Good afternoon and welcome to the May 28th workshop for the Board of Harbor Commissioners for Portland Harbor. Harbor Master, if you can please call the roll.
Commissioner Carter,
Here.
Commissioner Henshaw,
Here.
Commissioner Von Vogt, here, Commissioner Wilson, here, Commissioner Cummings, here.
All right. And going ahead and starting off with our first item of business, discussion of about creating a harbor / waterfront management plan. And well, I know this was your item, so I'll hand it off if you want to add anything.
Thank you, Chair. Paul's already put a lot of thought into it, started to talk to different agents, different constituencies. So I just wanted to give him a little bit of a chance to talk about kind of what timeline is and some of the stuff that you've kind of filled me in on a little bit about, needing the sequence of things that you need in order to be able to pay that and any support that you need from us.
Sure. So any busy harbor in Maine, I'm sure anywhere along the East Coast and Southern Coast, municipalities have what's known as a harbor management plan. And what that does is it directs what's going on now, but also what residents want to see in the future happen with your harbors. So just for an example, these are some items that typically go into a management plan. I want to just say that this is really stakeholder driven. I mean, yes, there's a kind of a template that a contractor or someone who would facilitate this would use, but it's really specific to the communities that you're in. So for example, Bar Harbor is going to be much different than Portland. Harpswell is going to be much different than Kittery. So it's really what goes on in your community. Some of the key points are resource inventory, such as mooring fields, public access points, and also environmental issues. Obviously, this agency is unique in that there's two cities that kind of cooperate with this agency. There's also no shellfish harvesting in Portland Harbor. So there's a lot of things that are kind of off the table, but maybe should be investigated on why they're off the table and if there's any reasons or ways to change that in the future. And that could be 50 years from now, but you got to start somewhere. Waters classification, understanding unique needs of the harbor. The inner harbor, the upper harbor may have a different need and use than Peaks Island or Cliff Island or East End. So understanding what those different areas, what they're capable of handling currently and what people want to see long term is something that should be talked about. And then usually the third part of a plan is to identify recommendations to either improve public access or improve these mooring fields or make ordinance changes, or in this case, rules and regulations changes that would drive that towards the goal, the ultimate goal in the end. Touched on, so mooring inventory, which we're actually already starting now. This would be how to better manage mooring fields, whether that's having the larger boats on the outside and having the smaller boats on the inside. Again, that just takes planning, that takes years. You're not going to get everyone to cooperate to pay the contractor for next year, for example, to move everyone to the outside and move all the smaller boats to the inside. It's not feasible. Identifying areas where private aids to navigation may play a role. Are there areas where there needs to be no wake buoys? Obviously not in the inner harbor, but maybe around Diamond Island Pass or in areas where we just have known complaints and known problems where the public doesn't generally know the regulations. Identify water quality issues, standards. Again, I touched on the marine harvesting. Specifically shellfish, obviously other species can be harvested like lobsters and whatnot, but just understanding why the bay is closed for that purpose. I have reached out to the Greater Portland Council of Governments because they do a great job of facilitating this kind of project, especially where both cities would have to be involved in this. I haven't heard back yet. I'm sure they're probably having some internal discussions. For funding, there is, so I believe I told the board earlier this year that we got a real rough estimate from a contractor who did the Rockland Harbor Management Plan. And using the numbers that he did for that, he believes that Portland Harbor would be roughly in the $100,000 range to complete this, if that contractor specifically were to do the plan. Obviously, if we were to be able to get GP Cog involved, maybe that could go down. We talked about how some of the cities are doing their own work with some environmental assessments, which would help out with the data sets. So there may be ways to save money here. There is one specific funding opportunity that the state puts out, is the Shore and Harbor Planning Grant. Max awards are usually $50,000. There is a 10% match, but that can be in-kind work as well, which I think we could easily meet that. The only catch with it is this is a really in-depth process, and you basically have just 1 year to complete it. The grant will only reimburse work that's done. So they don't just give you the money up front, you have to pay for it, they'll reimburse you. But the grant is usually due by middle of January every year. And they'll get the funding out to you in February, and then the results are due by March, end of March, the following year. So you kind of have to have everything lined up. You kind of have your contractor lined up. You got to have, if you're going to have a subcommittee with residents or the commission or whoever, all these things. I think we're in a good time right now if we want to get going on this for the next year. It's a good time to have these conversations, but that's kind of where we're at. That's, we're kind of taking the next step to, get GP Cog involved, see if they can assist us in any way. And then we can also have conversations with the state, the Shore and Harbor Grant, and kind of get on their radar that this might be coming. So it's kind of where we're at. It's a really in-depth process, but I just want to drive home that it's really stakeholder driven. So I really see residents from both communities having a lot of say in this. The fishing community, the working waterfront community, marinas, everyone needs to have a say in what the future looks like at Portland Harbor.
GP Cog has money on occasion for lots of different things. That,
And that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping by reaching out to them, they might get sparked by this and say,
Yeah.
hey, this is a great initiative. And something they want to tie their name to as well.
when you get a dialogue with them, I'd ask them if they had any thoughts on that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of strange grants.
Also, MOCA, the new main office of community affairs, has the community action grants, which are like resiliency for communities.
Yep.
So if we attached it to environmental, you mentioned a couple of
Yes.
environmental issues. There's each town, both city Portland and South Portland, could ask for up to 75,000 each year. This year, I know the city of Portland's already allocated it for other things, but next year, next spring, we can apply potentially for that. If the city has to agree to it, it's not something
Right.
we can apply directly, but if they were willing to even take 25,000 on both sides, you've got 50 plus. If we can get the other grant, you're pretty close to the 100.
Yeah.
Right, and I guess going with the 50,000, carrying to 100,000 is the long term, and again, knowing that these things do take a long time. Is it possible that we sort of break it down into sort of more bite-sized pieces so that we can go after some of these smaller grants and tackle it item one at a time? And again, I'm saying all of this without having thought through what items 1 through like 4 or 5 might be. But just off of the top of my head, okay, is one of them recreational use in the harbor? One of them's fishery use. One's more the industrial side with the cruise ships, those sort of things. One's the environmental side. And again, I know that all of these play together at the end of the day. But if we maybe break it up into bite-sized pieces, we might have better luck getting $20,000 grants with more specific targets rather than $100,000 for sort of a general planning. Now, I don't know that for a fact, but just throwing out my 2 cents.
Absolutely. So the Shore and Harbor grants do allow you to break up your project. Because I think they recognize, there are some municipalities that just have crazy amount of things happening in their harbors. So yes, you can break it up. And in fact, they probably would appreciate that more instead of trying to see us rush it through the 1 year timeframe.
Who did Rockland's grant, plan?
Oh, of course, you'd ask me that, right? Let me get back to you on the name itself.
Yeah, and how they paid for it would be interesting as well.
Yeah, because I also think going with the breaking it down idea, you're right, there's a lot of stakeholders that are going to want to be involved in Portland Harbor, and I could see a subcommittee quickly getting out of control if we try to
Do too much.
tackle everything at once.
So I guess I would just ask, if this is something the board wants to see move forward, and I guess maybe the next step would be just to wait to hear back from GP Cog and see if they have an interest in assisting. I mean, how do you want staff to move forward?
So I know Christina Egan, so I could certainly give her a call. She's the director there.
That's who I emailed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Open that dialogue.
Christina, and yeah, I think that's a great place to begin. They could reduce costs, but they also have pretty good knowledge about the different communities' interaction with the waterfront. So. Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think I'd like, to speak for myself, I'd like to give you permission to work on this and make it a priority over the next couple of years to get this done. I don't think it's something that's going to emerge, as Mike said, might have to take in steps. May not be something you can get done by the end of the summer, but just keep us informed about what it is, and if we can help in some way. And certainly, we technically put a piece in the budget around this, but that's going to be a little shaky depending on revenues. So, but anything we could do and talk to our respective communities and see if we can get them behind it would be great.
And I guess, yeah, that was kind of part 2 to this is the cities need to be on board. So how do we approach that?
Yeah, I think kind of going with that, I think and again, I'll say also just from my standpoint, the first thing I'd like to see is sort of not what's going into each chapter, but sort of like what are the chapter headers that we're looking for of like, okay, we come out of this, we have succeeded if we have a plan for what categories. And then sort of underneath each of those categories, a rough outline of who the stakeholders are, because I agree with you, and I think that the 2 biggest things that we're going to have to tackle early is going to be getting the cities on board, and I think that knowing what we're looking at will help get the cities engaged. And then the second one being the subcommittee, because I do believe we'll need to have a subcommittee and trying to figure out who's involved and what. Because again, I've been on some big subcommittees in the past, and realistically, as soon as you start getting into the teams, it starts to get really unmanageable very quickly. And just doing rough counts in my head, probably 1 or 2 representatives from each city, 1 or 2 representatives from this commission, we're already at 5 or 6, and then bring in stakeholders. I think we're going to want to be very targeted on who and what that is.
Scope is gonna be a key issue. I mean, Portland doesn't allow any residential stuff on the waterfront anymore. It's all working waterfront, and I don't think South Portland could be any more opposite to that. And so to kind of tag on that, getting their buy-in they'll probably buy in because they're gonna have their own pet projects. It's gonna make the project challenging to get an end document that anybody is proud about that doesn't end up on the shelf. So that will be the fun part. I've seen lots of, lots of plans that have been well intentioned, and I can tell you what they do, nothing, they collect a lot of dust, so, and a lot of them, they're too broad, too overarching goals, the KISS effort is probably gonna be, what do we wanna tackle here that we feel falls into our realm of authority, I guess, and what can we get done, looks like, break it down, go after the $100,000 plan, it will probably end up on a shelf, but if you part one of 10 parts might. Part 79 just may never get done. Cities will never agree. Not that I know what 79 was.
I know, just from my experience with like, the waters classification plan, that's typically an harbor management plan. It's really good teeth to have behind you when, let's take aquaculture, for example, an LPA takes a small area. That's a limited purpose aquaculture license. That, if you don't have good reasoning behind why something can't go somewhere, you don't have any teeth with the state to say this board or the harbor master or the cities don't want something somewhere. On the flip side of that, these plans can also identify areas where LPAs can go, or when another mooring can go somewhere. Because if you don't have teeth behind your ordinance or behind, let's say someone makes a really good proposal to have a mooring over at Jewel Island. And you say, the commission has said no, but they push it, or now they're just beyond it. They're just outside of Jewel, they're more towards Cliff. This plan can really show, hey, a lot of thought went into this. We have outlined these areas that say where moorings can and can't go. And this is, why the harbor master denied that application and blah, blah, blah. So all these little details have a lot of thought that go into them, and they do hold up. They hold up. It hasn't gone, in my experience, I haven't gone to court over it, but with state agencies, I've had to defend it, and it does hold up. So it's a really time consuming, but a really worthy thing to do for the harbors.
Yeah, I think that's a good criteria. Keep in mind kind of what can we legitimately, we actually implement and execute it from the harbor position, but also what would be helpful for the long-term planning of the harbor. Yeah, we want it to be workable.
So it sounds like, you could plan on what we're gonna plan between now and January.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can get some grant applications in.
Okay.
Would that be something we'd look at congressionally directed spending for too, or is it timeline's probably too long for that?
I don't
It'd also
know.
be too small
Too
dollar
small,
values for them.
Yeah.
Well, if we have a harbor master for the next US Senator, we got a chance.
Okay. Perfect. So I think that gives us direction on that, and again, I know we're going into the busy season for everything, so. So look forward to hearing that whenever you get around to it.
Okay.
Okay, and item 2, review and discussion of operational fees and. Paul, did you put that one on, or was that?
I put
yours?
that on.
Okay,
It's directed primarily at the pilot and docking master fees. And I don't know that we ever had a discussion, since the pilots are not under our jurisdiction, what the fee we were gonna charge the docking pilots, and the budget has 10,000. Dan or some other, you guys may have some more perspective on how this has gone over the years. But I just wanted to get clarification before we invoice. And just make sure we talked it through.
yes, if I recall correctly, and I'm trying to see if I can find the
I can't remember,
previous invoices to look it up.
I know what the previously we charged the pilots 13,000, the docking pilots 7, and I don't know what the rationale was for that.
It was based off of number of vessels that they brought in. So we had the 20,000 and then we broke it up based off of how much of what each of them did. So. Yeah, I know that we put 10 into the budget. Again, if we did 7,000 for them last year, I'm comfortable with it, us keeping it the same and taking a harder look at it next year. I don't think the intent was. And based off my budget, the budget conversation and what I'm
Mhm.
recalling, I think. I don't think our intent was really to up the fee that we're charging them. It was more just keeping it as it
Keep it
as it
nominal,
was,
yeah.
right?
That was why I put it on the agenda. I just wanted to make sure before we, because I don't remember that we had a discussion of it, and I know there's historical precedent. Just wanted to know.
Yeah, no, I would stick with what we did last year for them, and
Alright.
again, I know that we have our rules update that's coming that we'll have to. Make official rules updates and items as well, so. But yeah, no, otherwise. Cause I know that we. And then, yeah, we'll want to look at, again, probably in the fall, starting in the fall, looking at. What we are looking at for operational fees moving forward. So, yeah. Okay. I'm good with that. Any other comments on that one?
So confirming 7,000.
Yeah, I would say keep it what it was last year.
I just didn't remember, I wasn't here for how it was set previous, and I just wanted to understand.
Okay, perfect. Then that closes that item. So doesn't sound like we'll have any items moving forward for the public hearing. I don't have dates in front of me.
11,
Thank you.
just something at the bottom.
Sure, read ahead. Cheat way down here. Yeah, on June 11th. So if anything comes up, we still hold it, but doesn't sound like we're going to carry any items forward to that meeting. Okay, and with that being said, Harbor Master, do you have a report?
Yeah, just real brief. So, things are starting to pick up, as everyone can see in the harbor. No major incidents as of yet, which is great. The deputy harbor masters have started filtering in, doing some evening patrols. We are gonna be trying to focus on, that dinner time and beyond. I know that was kind of important for the board to see some more, presence after dinner time hours, so we're gonna be focusing on that. We have 2 new hired deputy harbor masters starting next week. Be good to get them up and running. Both of them are very well experienced, as you guys know, from previous discussions. So I don't anticipate any major hurdles with that. I just want to touch on, so I met with Portland Cruise Control about 2 weeks ago. They wanted to get some clarification on a memo that the city of Portland had put out from their infectious or their what is it? Not Centers for Disease Control. It's,
Health
Health
and.
and Services, yeah.
Yes.
They put out a memo because they were prompted. This started when folks wanted to know what happens when a cruise ship comes into port with an infectious disease, a known one, like norovirus or anything else. And so the city put out a memo stating their protocol to, you know, the call would come in presumably to them or through the Coast Guard, or there's other routes that the cruise ships have to go through. They would then notify the main CDC and then escalate it to the federal CDC if they had to do that. But then they put in their memo that it was kind of just a quick blurb that said that the harbor master has the authority to redirect ships based on the health and welfare of the residents. And there was a lot of confusion on what that meant. And so I spoke to these folks at Portland Cruise Control and informed them that although I can't speak directly for the board, I can't believe that the intent would ever to be that the harbor master should have the authority to redirect a ship that has an illness on board, because we are not experts. We are not infectious disease experts. We would rely on the professionals to make that determination. What I did say was I thought it was more directed towards possibly an unseaworthy ship or a vessel that's having an uncontrollable discharge. That's where we would say you need to get out of the port. You're not coming in here. So they were just looking for that clarification. I think they just wanted to almost hear from the board's mouth or have it on the record on what the board's intent was when that was put into the rules and regulations. Just to ensure that my interpretation was accurate.
Yeah, and I can say that we did email back and forth, and I can't speak to what the previous board's intent was when they wrote that in, but in sort of reading our regs, our statute and the harbor master statute that would apply in most other places, I do believe that the intent is that we would be sort of the enforcement side of that. I agree completely that we are not health experts and we should not be making the decision based off of the health. But I do believe that reading our statute and sort of the overarching main harbor master statute would be that we are the ones with the authority to enforce if Maine CDC or South Portland and Portland say this vessel's not allowed to come in and dock at one of our facilities. So that is how I've seen it. I will acknowledge I haven't run it by a lawyer yet. I can definitely do that just to get a little bit of clarification, but based off of my reading of the statute and sort of main harbor master law, I think that was the intent was, and that would be how I would look to enforce it as well.
I think you're right. I think they're lanes. So when I was the emergency manager and fire chief, I had the right to kick tankers off the dock, but it had to be a fire or safety related. It had to be in my lane. I could not, even though I was emergency manager, I could not kick a ship out for sick because that's a Coast Guard lane and CDC lane. So I think that's you're correct that if it's unseaworthy or is gonna, capsize or, dump all kinds of chemicals in the water, you have, that's your lane, but I think that's where it comes down is the lane's authority.
So Memorial Day was rather quiet this year?
Yes,
The weather?
the weather was,
Yeah.
big part of that. Yeah. And this weekend doesn't look much better, but future weekend, the next weekend looks pretty good, so we're hopeful for.
I mean, you gotta knock on wood when you say that.
Yeah, the last June.
Yeah.
18, or whatever it was, 18 Saturdays in a row.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, I remember it very good. I have PTSD on it.
And that is all I have.
All right, any commissioners' comments?
So I had a question, and would it be inappropriate if we had access into your new scheduling program to see
Sure.
who's working?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe for me, I'm just a little more curious about who's working, if I need to call somebody,
Yeah.
so I knew who's working, but
Yeah.
that would be the only reason I'd want to see it, just to see who I was calling, if I had
If anyone wants it, we'll give you the PHM admin login. And you can literally go in and just see the schedule real time.
to see who's on.
Yeah. Sure.
That's great.
Perfect. All right. Well, if that's all commissioners' comments, then this workshop, I'll adjourn this. Mouth doesn't work.